Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Ryan in Singapore. Welcome to Mindfulness Hour. Once a week on Saturday morning here in Singapore, it might be Friday night over there for you. We have 1 hour to practice mindfulness, to do some kind of mindfulness practice and some lesson. And today's practice is a little bit special in that we're, instead of spending 40 minutes practicing, I'll probably be spending about a half an hour reading through, well, maybe not, somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes reading through an article by Kristin Neff, who is kind of the founder of self-compassion research, the first person to really do any significant research about self-compassion. So she's written a relatively long article for mindfulleader.org, and I'm really happy to be walking through that with you today. This one's really good, I think, for self-compassion skeptics. It's really here to break it down. Like, what is self-compassion all about? Why is it better than other strategies? It's going to be a good one. And in fact, because it's so long, I'm going to need to get started here very quickly. So instead of kind of rambling, I'll get into it. The name of the article is 5 Myths About Self-Compassion by Kristin Neff. What keeps us from being kinder to ourselves? Most people don't have any problem seeing compassion as a thoroughly commendable quality. It seems to refer to an amalgam of unquestionably good qualities: kindness, mercy, tenderness, benevolence, understanding, empathy, sympathy, and fellow feeling, along with an impulse to help other living creatures, human or animal, in distress. But we seem less sure about self-compassion. For many, it carries the whiff of all of those other bad self terms: self-pity, self-serving, self-indulgent, self-centered, just plain selfish. Even many generations removed from our culture's Puritan origins. And Kristin is from University of Austin, Texas. We seem to believe that if we aren't blaming or punishing ourselves for something, we risk moral complacency, runaway egotism, and the sin of false pride. Consider Rachel, a 39-year-old marketing executive with 2 kids and a loving husband. A deeply kind person, devoted wife, involved parent, supportive friend, and hard worker. She also finds time to volunteer for 2 local charities. In short, she appears to be an ideal role model. But Rachel's in therapy because her levels of stress are so high. She's tired all the time, depressed, unable to sleep. She experiences chronic, low-level digestive problems and sometimes, to her horror, snaps at her husband and kids. Through all this, she's incredibly hard on herself, always feeling that whatever she's done isn't good enough, yet she'd never consider trying to be compassionate to herself. In fact, the very idea of letting up on her self-attack, giving herself some kindness and understanding, strikes her as somehow childish and irresponsible. And Rachel isn't alone. Many people in our culture have misgivings about the idea of self-compassion, perhaps because they don't really know what it looks like, much less how to practice it. Often, the practice of self-compassion is identified with the practice of mindfulness, now ubiquitous as sushi in the West. But while mindfulness, with its emphasis on being experientially open and aware to our own suffering without being caught up in it and swept away by adverse reactivity, is necessary for self-compassion, it leaves out its essential ingredient. What distinguishes self-compassion is that it goes beyond accepting our experience as it is and adds something more: embracing the experiencer, i.e. ourselves, with warmth and tenderness when our experience is painful. Self-compassion also includes elements of wisdom, recognition of our own common humanity. This means accepting the fact that, along with everyone else on the planet, we're flawed and imperfect individuals, just as likely as anyone else to be hit by the slings and arrows of outrageous but perfectly normal misfortune. This sounds obvious, but it's funny how easily we forget. We fall into the trap of believing that things are supposed to go well And when we make a mistake or some difficulty comes along, something must have gone terribly wrong. Excuse me, there must be some error. I signed up for the everything will go swimmingly well until the day I die plan. Can I please speak to the management? The feeling that certain things shouldn't be happening makes us feel both ashamed and isolated. At those times, remembering that we aren't alone in our suffering, that hardship and struggle are deeply embedded in the human condition, can make a radical difference. I remember being at the park with my son Rowan when he was about 4 years old, at the peak of his autism. I was sitting on a bench watching the happy children playing on the swings, chasing each other and having fun, while Rowan was just sitting on top of the slide, repeatedly banging his head, something known as stimming. Admittedly, I started to go down the path of self-pity. Why can't I have a normal child like everyone else? Why am I the only one who's having such a hard time? But years of self-compassion practice gave me enough presence to catch my mind, pause, take a deep breath, and become aware of the trap I was falling into. With a little distance from my negative thoughts and feelings, I looked out at the other mothers and their children and thought to myself, I'm assuming these kids are going to grow up with carefree, unproblematic lives, that none of these mothers will have to struggle as they raise their children. But for all I know, some of these kids grow up to develop serious mental or physical health issues, or just turn out to be not very nice people. There's no child who's perfect, and no parent who doesn't go through some form of hardship or challenge with their children at one time or another. At that moment, my feeling of intense isolation turned into feelings of deep connection with the other mothers in the park. With all the parents everywhere, and we all love our kids, but damn, it's tough sometimes. And as odd as it may sound, by practicing self-compassion as we muddle through, we don't feel so alone. Fortunately, this isn't just wishful thinking about another self-help approach. In fact, there's now an impressive and growing body of research demonstrating that relating to ourselves in a kind, friendly manner is essential for emotional well-being. Not only does it help us avoid the inevitable consequences of harsh self-judgment, depression, anxiety, and stress, it also engenders a happier and more hopeful approach to life. More pointedly, research proves false many of the common myths about self-compassion that keeps us trapped in the prison of relentless self-criticism. Myth number 1. Self-compassion is a form of self-pity. One of the biggest myths about self-compassion is that it means being sorry for yourself. In fact, as my own experience on the playground exemplifies, self-compassion is an antidote to self-pity and the tendency to whine about our bad luck. This isn't because self-compassion allows you to tune out all the bad stuff. In fact, it makes us more willing to accept, experience, and acknowledge difficult feelings with kindness, which paradoxically helps us process and let go of them more fully. Research shows that self-compassionate people are less likely to get swallowed up by the self-pitying thoughts about how bad things are. That's one of the reasons self-compassionate people have better mental health. A study by Philip Reyes at the University of Leuven examined the association of self-compassion with ruminative thinking and mental health among undergraduates at his university. He first assessed how participants were using the self-report self-compassion scale I developed in 2003, which asks respondents to indicate how often they engage in behaviors corresponding to the main elements of self-compassion. Examples include statements such as, I try to be understanding and patient towards aspects of my personality I don't like. When things are going badly for me, I see the difficulties as part of life that everyone goes through. And when something painful happens, I try to take a balanced view of the situation. Reyes found that participants with higher levels of self-compassion tended to brood less about their misfortune. Moreover, he found that their reduced tendency to ruminate helped explain why self-compassion participants reported fewer symptoms of anxiety and depression. Myth number 2, self-compassion means weakness. John had always considered himself a pillar of strength, an ideal husband and provider, so he was devastated when his wife left him for another man. Secretly racked with guilt for not doing more to meet her emotional needs before she sought comfort in someone else's arms, he didn't want to admit how hurt he still felt and how hard it was for him to move on with his life. When his colleague suggested that he try being compassionate to himself about his divorce, his reaction was swift. Don't give me that hearts and flowers stuff. Self-compassion is for sissies. I had to be hard as nails to get through the divorce with some semblance of self-respect, and I'm not about to let my guard down now. What John didn't know is that instead of being a weakness, researchers are discovering that self-compassion is one of the most powerful sources of coping and resilience available to us. When we go through a major life crisis, self-compassion appears to make all the difference in our ability to survive and even thrive. John assumed that being a tough guy during his divorce, stuffing down his feelings and not admitting how much pain he was in, is what got him through. But he wasn't through. He was stuck, and self-compassion was the missing piece that probably would have helped him move on. David Sbarra and his colleagues at University of Arizona examined whether self-compassion helps determine how well people adjust to a divorce. The researchers invited more than 100 people recently separated from their spouses to come into the lab and make a 4-minute stream of consciousness recording of their thoughts and feelings about the separation experience. 4 trained judges later coded how self-compassionate these discussions were, using a modified version of the self-compassion scale. They gave low scores to participants who said things like, "I don't know how I managed to do this. It was all my fault. I pushed him away for some reason. I needed him so much. I still need him. What do? I know I did it all wrong." High scores were given to people who said things like, "Looking back, you have to take the best out of it and move on from there. Just forgive yourself and your ex for everything you both did and didn't do." The researchers found that participants who displayed more self-compassion when talking about their breakup evidenced better psychological adjustments to the divorce at the time, and that this effect persisted 9 months later. Results held even when controlled for other possible explanations such as participants' initial levels of self-esteem, optimism, depression, or secure attachment. Studies like this suggest that it's not just what you face in life, but how you relate to yourself when the going gets tough, as an inner ally or an inner enemy. That determines your ability to cope successfully. Myth number 3, self-compassion will make me complacent. Perhaps the biggest block to self-compassion is the belief that it'll undermine our motivation to push ourselves to do better. The idea is that if we don't criticize ourselves for failing to live up to our standards, we'll automatically succumb to slothful defeatism. But let's think for a moment how parents successfully motivate their children. When Rachel's teenage son comes home one day with a failing English grade, she could look disgusted and hiss, "Stupid boy, you'll never amount to anything. I'm ashamed of you." Makes you cringe, doesn't it? Yet that's the exact same type of thing that Rachel tells herself when she fails to meet her own high expectations. But most likely, rather than motivating her son, this torrent of shame will just make him lose faith in himself, and eventually he'll stop trying altogether. Alternatively, Rachel could adopt a compassionate approach, saying, "Oh, sweetheart, you must be so upset. Hey, give me a hug. It happens to all of us. But we need to get your English grades up because I know you want to get into a good college. What can I do to help and support you? I believe in you." Notice that there is an honest recognition of the failure, sympathy for her son's unhappiness, and encouragement to go beyond or around this momentary bump in the road. This is the type of caring response that helps us maintain our self-confidence and feel emotionally supported. Ironically, even though Rachel wouldn't even dream of taking the former approach with her son, she unquestionably believes that self-flagellation is necessary for her to achieve her goals. She assumes that her anxiety, depression, and stress are a result of her not trying hard enough. But there's now a good deal of research clearly showing that self-compassion is a far more effective force for personal motivation than self-punishment. For instance, a series of research experiments by Juliana Breens at Serena Chen of the University experiments by Juliana Breens and Serena Chen of the University of California, Berkeley, examined whether helping undergraduate students to be more self-compassionate would motivate them to engage in positive change. In one study, participants were asked to recall a recent action they felt guilty about, such as cheating on an exam, lying to a romantic partner, saying something harmful that still made them feel bad about themselves when they thought about it. Next, they were randomly assigned to one of 3 conditions. In the self-compassion condition, participants were instructed to write to themselves for 3 minutes from the perspective of a compassionate and understanding friend. In the second condition, participants were instructed to write about their own positive qualities, and in the third, they wrote about a hobby they enjoyed. These two control conditions help differentiate self-compassion from positive self-talk and positive mood in general. The researchers found that participants who were helped to be self-compassionate about their recent transgression reported being more motivated to apologize for the harm done and committed to not repeating the behavior again than compared to those in the control conditions. Self-compassion, far from being a way to evade personal accountability, actually strengthens it. If we can acknowledge our failures and misdeeds with kindness, "Oh, I really messed up when I got so mad at her, but I was stressed and I guess all people overreact sometimes," rather than judgment. "I can't believe I said that. I'm such a horrible, mean person." It's much safer to see ourselves clearly. When we can see beyond the distorting lens of harsh self-judgment, we get in touch with the other parts of ourselves, the parts that care and want everyone, including ourselves, to be as healthy and happy as possible. This provides the encouragement and support needed to do our best and try again. Myth number 4. Self-compassion is narcissistic. In American culture, high self-esteem requires standing out in a crowd, being special and above average. How do you feel when someone calls your work performance or parenting skills or intelligence level average? Ouch. The problem, of course, is that Garrison Keller's Lake Webegun, notwithstanding, sorry, I don't know this reference. It's impossible for everyone to be above average. It's impossible for everyone to be above average at the same time. We may excel at some areas, but there's always someone more attractive, successful, and intelligent than we are, meaning we feel like failures whenever we compare ourselves to those better than us. The desire to see ourselves as better than average, however, to get and keep that elusive feeling of high self-esteem, can lead to downright nasty behavior. Why do early adolescents begin to bully each other? If I can be seen as the cool, tough kid in contrast to the wimpy nerd I just picked on, I get a self-esteem boost. Why are we so prejudiced? If I believe my ethnic, gender, national, or political group is better than yours, I get a self-esteem boost. Indeed, emphasis is placed on self-esteem in American society and has led to a worrying trend. Researchers Gene Twenge of San Diego State University and Keith Campbell of the University of Georgia, who've tracked narcissism scores of college students since 1987, find that narcissism of the modern-day students is at the highest level ever recorded. They attribute the rise to narcissism to well-meaning but misguided parents and teachers who tell kids how special and great they are in an attempt to raise their self-esteem. But self-compassion is different from self-esteem. Although they're both strongly linked to psychological well-being, self-esteem is a positive evaluation of self-worth, while self-compassion isn't a judgment or an evaluation at all. Instead, self-compassion is a way of relating to the ever-changing landscape of who we are with kindness and acceptance, especially when we fail or feel inadequate. In other words, self-esteem requires feeling better than others, whereas self-compassion requires acknowledging that we share the human condition of imperfection. Self-esteem is also inherently fragile, bouncing up and down according to our latest success or failure. I remember a time my self-esteem soared and then crashed within about 5 seconds. I remember this story. I was visiting an equestrian stable with my friends, and the old Spanish riding instructor there apparently liked my Mediterranean looks. "You are very beautiful," he told me, as I felt myself glow with pleasure. And then he added, "Don't ever shave your mustache." Self-esteem is a fair-weather friend, there for us in good times, deserting us when our luck heads south. But self-compassion is always there for us, a reliable source of support even when our worldly stock has crashed. It still hurts when our pride is dashed, but we can be ourselves precisely because it hurts. Wow, that was pretty humiliating. I'm so sorry. It's okay, though these things happen. There's solid research for the idea that self-compassion helps us in good times and bad. Mark Leary and colleagues at Wake Forest University conducted a study that asked participants to make a video that introduced and described themselves. For instance, "Hi, I'm John, an environmental sciences major. I love to go fishing and spend time in nature. I went to work for the National Park Service when I graduated," and so on. And they were told that someone would watch the tape and then rate them on a 7-point scale in terms of how warm, friendly, intelligent, likable, and mature they appeared. The feedback was bogus, of course, given by a study confederate. Half the participants received positive ratings and the other half received neutral ratings. The researchers wanted to examine if participants' level of self-compassion, as measured by scores on the self-compassion scale, would predict reactions to the feedback differently from their level of self-esteem, as measured by the Rosenberg self-esteem scale. They found that self-compassionate people reported similar emotional reactions in terms of how happy, sad, angry, or tense they were feeling, regardless of whether the feedback was positive or neutral. People with high levels of self-esteem, however, tended to get upset when they received neutral feedback. What, I'm just average? They were likelier to deny that the feedback was due to their own personality and blamed it on external factors, such as the observers being in a bad mood. This suggests that self-compassionate people are better able to remain emotionally stable regardless of the degree of praise they receive from others. Self-esteem, in contrast, thrives only when the reviews are good, and it may lead to evasive tactics when there's the possibility of facing unpleasant truths about ourselves. This one, I like this one a lot. Anyway, I'll move on. Myth number 5. Self-compassion is selfish. Many people are suspicious of self-compassion because they conflate it with selfishness. Rachel, for instance, spends large portion of her days caring for her family and many of her nights and weekends volunteering for the charities she supports. Raised in a family that emphasized the importance of service to others, she assumes that spending time and energy being kind and caring toward herself automatically means she must be neglecting everyone else for her own selfish ends. Indeed, many people are like Rachel in this sense. Good, generous, altruistic souls who are perfectly awful to themselves while thinking this is necessary to their general goodness. But is compassion really a zero-sum game? Think about the times you've been lost in the throes of self-criticism. Are you self-focused or other-focused in the moment? Do you have more or fewer resources to give to others? Most people find that when they're absorbed in self-judgment, they actually have little bandwidth left over to think about anything other than their inadequate, worthless selves. In fact, beating yourself up can be a paradoxical form of self-centeredness. When we can be kind and nurturing to ourselves, however, many of our emotional needs are met, leaving us in a better position to focus on others. Unfortunately, the ideal of being modest, self-effacing, and caring for the welfare of others often comes with a corollary that we must treat ourselves badly. This is especially true for women, who research indicates tend to have slightly lower levels of self-compassion than men, even when they tend to be more caring, empathetic, and giving towards others. Perhaps this isn't so surprising, given that women are socialized to be caregivers, selflessly to open their hearts to their husbands, children's, friends, and elderly parents, but aren't taught to care for themselves. While the feminist revolution helped expand the roles available to women, and we now see more female leaders in business and politics than ever before, the idea that women should be selfless caregivers hasn't really gone away. It's just that women are now supposed to be successful at their careers in addition to being ultimately nurturers at home. The irony is that being good to yourself actually helps you be good to others, while being bad to yourself only gets in the way. In fact, I recently conducted a study with my colleague, Tasha Beretvas at University of Texas at Austin, that explored whether self-compassionate people were more giving relationship partners. We recruited more than 100 couples who had been in romantic relationships for a year or longer. Participants rated their own level of self-compassion using the self-compassion scale. They then described their partner's behavior in the relationship on a series of self-report measures, also indicating how satisfied they were with their partners. We found that self-compassionate individuals were described by their partners as being more caring, for example, gentle and kind towards me, accepting, for example, respects my opinions, and autonomy supporting, for example, gives me as much freedom as I want, than their self-critical counterparts who were described as being more detached, for example, doesn't think much about me. Aggressive, for example, yells, stomps out of the room, and controlling, for example, expects me to do everything his or her way. Participants also reported being more satisfied and securely attached in their relationship with self-compassionate partners, which makes sense. If I'm withholding towards myself and relying on my partner to meet my emotional needs, I'm going to behave badly when they're not met. But if I can give myself care and support to meet my own needs directly, I'll have more emotional resources available to give to my partner. The research literature is unclear about whether self-compassion is actually necessary to be compassionate to others, given that many people do a pretty good job of caring for others while shortchanging themselves. However, a growing body of research indicates that self-compassion helps people sustain the act of caring for others. For instance, it appears that counselors and therapists who are self-compassionate and less likely to experience stress and caregiver burnout. They're more satisfied with their careers and feel more energized, happy, and grateful for being able to make a difference in the world. Because we evolved as social beings, exposure to other people's tales of suffering activates the pain centers of our own brains through a process of empathetic resonance. When we witness the suffering of others on a daily basis, we can experience personal distress to the point of burning out, and caregivers who are especially sensitive and empathetic may be at the most risk. At the same time, when we give ourselves compassion, we create a protective buffer, allowing us to understand and feel for the suffering person without being drained by his or her suffering. The people we care for then pick up our compassion through their own process of empathetic resonance. In other words, the compassion we cultivate for ourselves directly transmits itself to others. I know this firsthand through my experience of raising an autistic child. Rowan is now 13, and although he can be a grumpy adolescent, he's a loving kid who poses few parenting challenges, but it wasn't always so. I often faced situations that I thought were beyond my ability to cope, and sometimes I had to rely on the power of self-compassion to get me through. Once, when Rowan was 5, I took him to England to see his grandparents. In the middle of the transatlantic flight, he threw an almighty tantrum. I have no idea what set him off, but suddenly I found myself with a flailing, screaming child in a plane full of people looking at us with dagger eyes. What do? I tried taking him to the bathroom in hopes that the closed door would muffle his screams. But after I'd shuffled down the aisle, trying to keep him from accidentally hitting passengers along the way, I found the toilet was occupied. Huddled with Rowan in a tiny space outside the toilet, I felt helpless and hopeless. But I then remembered self-compassion. "This is so hard for you, darling," I said to myself. "I'm sorry this is happening. I'm here for you." While making sure that Rowan was safe, 90% of my attention was on soothing and comforting myself. My mind became flooded with compassion to the point that it dominated my experience, far more than the screaming of my child. Furthermore, as I'd already discovered, when I was in a more peaceful, loving frame of mind, Rowan also calmed down. As I soothed myself, he was soothed as well. When we care tenderly for ourselves in response to our suffering, our heart opens. Compassion engages our capacity for love, wisdom, courage, and generosity. It's a mental and emotional state that's boundless and directionless, grounded in the great spiritual traditions of the world, but available to every person simply by virtue of our being human. In a surprising twist, the nurturing power of self-compassion is now being illuminated by the matter-of-fact, tough-minded methods of empirical science, and a growing body of research literature is demonstrating conclusively that self-compassion is not only central to mental health, but can be enriched through learning and practice, just like so many other good habits. Therapists have known for a long time that being kind to ourselves isn't, as is often believed, a selfish luxury, but the exercise of a gift that makes us happier. Now, finally, science is proving the point. All right, there we go. So we are, it's about right, about 30 minutes in. So that's the article from Kristin Neff. I guess I should probably spend a little bit of time to advertise Kristin. Kristin is a researcher at the University of Austin, Texas, and also a teacher on Insight Timer. Kristin has several different practices available on Insight Timer that you can feel free to use. And I just listening to that story that article makes me really happy to listen to her voice. I've used her self-compassion. I think I might have posted it in my chat as well inside Ryan's Daily Mindfulness Circle. I think you can find it. There's at least one self-compassion practice from Kristin Neff. I'm going to type her name as well, so you can more easily look her up when this live practice is over if you want to do her self-compassion practice and to hear her voice. Kristin's amazing, and I have to say I've just absolutely and I haven't met her personally, but I really do love her work. It's great having you here. We're going to do a self-compassion practice. So that's kind of the. I mean, I can read a lot. I can tell you all about self-compassion. I can tell you about the benefits of self-compassion. But the thing is, how do we be more self-compassionate? One way is to practice self-compassion intentionally, is to start to, what's the sound of that inner voice like? Right? Is it one of harshness and criticism all the time? Is it one that is always beating yourself up? Do you find that you speak to yourself more harshly than you speak to your worst enemy? And so I suppose I can also say, to help continue your practice, I have a 10 minutes of self-compassion practice. 2 days ago, I just finished recording a high-quality version of that practice with some different wording. I like it. It's going to be a premium track on Insight Timer when those tracks release early next month. So you can feel free to listen to that when it comes out. I'll let you know when it does as well. But anyway, in the meantime, as we're already getting kind of close to the end of our practice time together, let us actually do a self-compassion practice. So if that voice of yours is a voice of inner harshness instead of, it's an inner critic instead of an inner ally, what can we do? How can we start to change that? Is through practice, through practicing, and being mindful, right? That's this first step as well. So you, in your daily life, maybe you hear that voice of self-harshness and self-criticism, okay? That's the first step. So mindfulness being the foundation. So you have to be aware when that's happening. If you aren't aware, then you're not going to be able to start to shift that voice. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into practice, and we'll start on the stable platform of mindfulness. So get comfortable wherever you are. You could be sitting, you can be lying down. So whatever posture is going to be comfortable and supportive to your practice today. And beginning by noticing the fact that you are breathing. Noticing the physical sensation of breath. As we inhale, feeling the expansion, the release and the contraction on the exhale. Noticing other bodily sensations. As of right now, I can feel the wind behind me. Maybe there's some air moving through the room. I especially can feel it on the surface of my skin that's exposed. So my short sleeves I can feel on my elbows, my forearms. I can feel the gentle moving and rustling of my clothes. Just taking a moment to rest in mindful awareness, focusing on the physical sensations happening right now. And as you feel ready, seeing if you can bring into mind someone who loves you or who loved you unconditionally at some point in their life and in your life. And seeing if you can remember the feeling of being loved unconditionally by another. The love that they accord for you or accorded for you. Seeing if you can remember that feeling. Giving yourself over to it, surrendering to it. Knowing that you don't need to be any different from how you are right now. That their love is for you, just as you are. And you need not feel particularly worthy or deserving. In fact, you may not feel worthy or deserving, and that does not matter. This person only wants the best for you. Only wants to see you happy. For your life to be one of ease. And their love for you is not dependent on your perceived success or failure. That their love is for you just as you are. Right now, right here in this moment. So can you give yourself over to that feeling of being loved? To be bathed in it. To be cradled, to be rocked. In the unconditional, limitless, beating heart of another person. Can I surrender myself to that limitlessness of unconditional love? And as you feel ready, is it possible? See if it's possible for you to bring that love from another person inside of yourself. That you are now not only the object of unconditional love, but you are also the one who's giving. You are not just receiving unconditional love, but you are giving it to yourself as well. In the way that a mother loves her newborn child, you are both simultaneously the mother and the child, loving and being loved. Holding yourself in your own embrace of unconditional love. And so for some of us, conjuring up these feelings may be challenging, may feel artificial, may feel like I don't feel anything at all. And this also does not matter. Understanding that trying to do this practice is already enough, that we're already making progress simply by trying to do it. We may not feel strong feelings, and that's okay. So what may also be helpful for us is seeing if we can wish ourselves well. Maybe use some phrases. In fact, not even worrying about who it is that's saying these phrases. Maybe imagining that these phrases just kind of bubbling up out of the recesses of your mind, or maybe you're being whispered to you by yourself or by the wind. So if you like, repeating after me. May I be happy and contented. May I be safe, free from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy and whole to whatever degree possible. May I be at peace. May I have ease of well-being. May I be happy and contented. May I be safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy and whole to whatever degree possible for me. May I be at peace. May I have ease of well-being. So continuing with these phrases, repeating them to yourself. May I be happy and contented. May I be safe and protected. May I be healthy and whole. May I be at peace. And so over time, the temptation may be to simply repeat these phrases like a mantra. The sound of the words become prominent. You begin to lose the meaning, seeing if instead of simply repeating the phrases that you can surrender yourself over to the feeling of happiness and contentment, to the feeling of being safe, to the feeling of being healthy, whole, complete, to the feeling of being peaceful. And remembering that these phrases and ones like it are available to you in those times of difficulty, of hardship, of struggle. And so let's reflect on these phrases that Kristin used for herself. This is so hard for you, darling. I'm sorry this is happening. I'm here for you. This is so hard for you, darling. I'm sorry this is happening. I'm here for you. So remembering that loving kindness is limitless. It's never not already here. You can tap into this well, dip into it at any moment. May I be happy and contented. May I be safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy, whole, and complete to whatever degree is possible for me. May I be at peace. May I have ease of well-being. So maybe some of us are feeling some strong emotions. So let's not end practice with these strong emotions. Let's see if we can start to ground back into the present moment. So breathing in, maybe clenching your fists as you breathe in. And then as we exhale, slowly opening our fists, opening our hands. Seeing if we can let go of whatever strong emotion we may be feeling and come back now to attention on the breath. Fully examining the inhalation. Fully examining the exhalation. So shortly, I'll close practice with 3 rings of the bell. But first, just like to congratulate everyone for making it through the practice today, as doing practices like this are a way for you to have a more active role in your own physical and mental health. And remember, self-compassion is not selfish. It's a way for you, as you make yourself better, as you are more resilient in yourself, you can't help but make everyone around you better as well. So here we go, closing practice with 3 rings of the bell. Okay. Right, thank you everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining in practice. Thanks as well for listening to that article. I noticed now there are like 20 additional people who weren't here for the article. Like I looked, it was like 72 people when I finished reading, and now it's 92. If you just tuned in and you missed this article from Kristin Neff that I read, one, you can read it yourself on Ryan's Daily Mindfulness Circle, my group and Insight Timer. You can see the link to the article there. If you'd rather have the article read to you, I will be posting this on YouTube later today, so you can see the replay of this video then. Questions or comments? How'd the practice go today? How are you feeling? Are you self-compassionate? Are you self-compassionate? Do you have a good self-compassion practice? What's the inner voice inside of yourself like? And just know that whatever it is, it doesn't have to be that way necessarily. So you can, through practice, begin to have some effect on what that inner voice is like. So whatever you'd like to share, please go ahead and write it in the chat. Thanks, CC, for your donation. Yeah, thanks everybody for being here today. Thanks, Mo, for being here. I'm glad you got something out of it. Thanks, Nadine. Great to see you here today. We've just got a couple more minutes left. This guy. He bit me on the top of the foot just now. It's like, what do you want attention? I already fed you. What's your problem? Attention-seeking behavior. Thanks, Haley. Anna says, usually my inner dialogue is very compassionate, but today's noticing a lot of frustration and irritability. Thanks, Anna, for sharing. Jean says, it's something I practice regularly as my inner critic makes an appearance often still. Yeah, me too, right? I think that's one of the reasons why I want to spend so much time reading this article, because, well, one is I found the article was really meaningful to me. I think it was just really interesting to see all of this and to see the myths debunked. But I know, I'll just share one little thing, right? It was like 2018, I took MBSR as a student in 2017, and I just remember, maybe a year after practicing, I remember sitting down with my MBSR teacher in a park. I mean, I remember very clearly this moment, and I said to her, and I had a really hard time saying it because I started crying. It was through strong tears. I said, "I'm okay just the way I am. I'm okay just the way I am." And I think that's something that was just so hard for me to get my head around. I had so many things that I was struggling with at that time, and I don't know, what it was, but those words were super, super hard for me to say. And now you can see it's a lot. It's become a lot easier. So I'm a testament to the practice, I guess, is that through practice, and you can figure it out. And it wasn't about, doesn't mean I don't have things to improve on by any means. There's still plenty of room for improvement. It's just that it's so easy to look at all of the things that could be better and to hate yourself in this moment. And I think that's really where this practice can shine, is just where, what is your attitude towards yourself? And just like the research shows, you can't get up off of your stump of self-hatred. You can't motivate yourself. It's hard to motivate yourself if you haven't started down that path of self-compassion at all. So it really is, and it's step by step. It's a little piece at a time. I remember clearly too my very first meditation retreat, the one-day MBSR retreat, when the very first loving kindness. I'd never, no one introduces it to you, and like in an MBSR that you don't know that it's coming, right? It just kind of shows up in the meditation retreat, and I was kind of like, what is this, right? This is not like the rest of what we've been learning. What's this loving kindness? What is all this about? I think I didn't fully understand how it fit into the practice either. But it does. It's kind of I can say with 100% certainty. I don't think my Goenka retreat, that 10-day retreat, would have gone nearly. I don't know what that retreat would have been like if I hadn't had the powerful tool of self-compassion. Because that's hard, and especially with an attitude of a person like me who is constantly striving to be better, and constantly dissatisfied with the current state, which I know I'm not. I talk about it because I know I'm not alone. This is the state of being human, being dissatisfied with the way things are and wanting things to be different and to be better. But know that in this moment, you can love yourself exactly the way that you are, because you are the way you are right now. I'm okay just the way I am. Yeah, he wants I see the big bug now. It's on the air conditioner up there. Frank's not going to be able to get to it, but I'm sure it's going to be in his digestive system later. And the critics showed up as we practiced, shares Jean. As she will. I'll definitely read the article again, says Barbara. I observe my resistance to self-compassion practice is decreasing. The article, Mia, you can scroll up. It's in the chat. It's called The 5 Myths About Self-Compassion. Jean shares, before I started practicing self-compassion, more than one of my therapists would suggest to me, how would you talk to yourself about X if you were your best friend? Thanks, Jean. I've been told to write up a gratitude list, says Lawrence, and gratitude's another topic. It's one that I've been covering quite a bit lately as well, just because of simplicity. Simplicity also kind of brings up gratitude, and this brings me also one more topic as well. Is besides doing a self-compassion meditation, as you can see, a lot of the research that Kristin Neff had done has to do with self-compassion journaling. The experimental group would be doing self-compassion journaling. So this is something else that you can try. And there are self-compassion prompts out there that can be really helpful. I know I love myself. Here, I'll give you a prompt, the one that I use in my retreat. I love myself, and I know it because. So you can use that as a journaling prompt if you like, and see how it goes. See what comes up. It may not all be positive stuff. It's really useful as well to do free flow journaling, to just not think about what you're writing, just let the writing flow. If you don't know what to write, say, I don't know what to write, until something pops up. And then when you're done writing, see what shows up, see what was there, see what came up in that session. And that can also give you a little bit of insight. All right, I'm already 5 minutes past my time. I've got to get moving. But it is a pleasure as always to be here. I have to say, as you probably know, I'm here 3 times a week live instead of 6 times a week, and just want to report back that it's going well. I'm very I do kind of miss doing this practice daily, but I find the spaciousness that I've created in my life has been very helpful, at least for right now. Not to say I won't come back and be daily again at some point. I think I probably will, but right now I'm finally partway through building my first Insight Timer course, and I'm really pleased with where it's going. I've already uploaded my 3 premium tracks, so when that launches in June, in fact, even before that, I think those premium tracks will be available to you. I'll let you know as soon as they publish and go live, so that you can have a look, because it's not yet, those premium tracks aren't yet publicly released, so I'll let you know. I'll let you know as soon as those tracks go live. So if you have a Insight Timer Plus premium membership, you can start to check them out and see what you think. Okay, well, before we go, let's spend one more moment to give some well wishes to ourselves, but let's not be selfish with our loving kindness. Let's send it out to everybody else, everybody that's here, and to all human beings, all sentient life around this world. Join me if you like. May I be happy and peaceful. May all of you watching, listening, wherever you are, may you all be happy and peaceful. And may all sentient life on Earth and even throughout the universe, may all life be happy and peaceful. All right, thanks again. I will be back on Tuesday morning Singapore time. That could be Monday night for you. I'll be back to talk about taming your elephant. So our mind is sometimes like a wild animal. What is the method we use to tame our mind? See you then. Bye-bye.